Lisa Morgan sat in the back row of the massive lecture hall, trying not to look too interested. The crystalline alien at the front of the room stood 12 feet tall, her body made of what looked like living glass that shifted colors as she moved. Professor Veltash was one of the most respected military historians in the galaxy, and Lisa felt lucky to be here at all. Only 12 humans had ever been accepted into the Zenthara Military Academy. Lisa was the first human woman to make it this far in the program. The other students were aliens from dozens of different worlds. Some had forearms, others had tentacles instead of legs, and a few looked like walking trees with eyes. But they all shared one thing. They were the best military minds their species had to offer. Today we study the great human defeat, Professor Veltash announced, her voice ringing like crystal bells. The year was 2387, barely 40 years ago. Humanity had spread to 17 star systems and thought they could challenge the established order. Lisa kept her face blank. She had studied this battle many times back on Earth, but she was curious to hear the alien version of events. The professor waved her hand, and a holographic display filled the air above the students. It showed star maps with red dots marking human colonies and blue dots showing hegemony coalition forces. The blue dots vastly outnumbered the red ones. The humans were foolish, Veltash continued. They believed their primitive weapons and crude tactics could match the combined might of 7 civilized species. The coalition assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, over 3,000 warships from the finest military traditions of our worlds. A four-armed student near the front raised one of his hands. Professor, how many ships did the humans have? Less than 400, Veltash replied. Most of them were converted cargo vessels and mining ships. They had no real military tradition, no understanding of proper warfare. It should have been over in days. Lisa frowned slightly. That number didn't sound right. Earth's military records showed they had fielded nearly 800 ships, including 57 purpose-built dreadnoughts. But she said nothing. The hologram changed to show a massive space battle. Thousands of alien ships surrounded a much smaller human fleet. Explosions bloomed in the darkness as the human ships were destroyed one by one. The Battle of Proxima was the decisive engagement, the professor explained. Admiral Kate Phillips commanded the human fleet. She was known for unconventional tactics, but against such overwhelming odds, creativity meant nothing. The humans lost 2/3 of their fleet in the first hour. Lisa's frown deepened. She had read Admiral Phillips's own report on that battle. Phillips had called it her greatest victory, not a defeat. But again, Lisa stayed quiet. The war lasted only 3 months, Veltash went on. System after system fell to coalition forces. The humans tried desperate measures, ramming attacks, suicide runs, even biological warfare. Nothing worked. Their colonies were captured, their fleets destroyed, their military leaders killed or captured. The hologram showed human ships exploding, space stations being boarded, and planets surrendering. The alien students nodded, impressed by their ancestors' victory over the primitive humans. Finally, with Earth itself under threat, the humans sued for peace, the professor concluded. The Treaty of Terran Submission was signed aboard the coalition flagship Eternal Glory. Humanity agreed to withdraw from all contested systems and limit their expansion. They have honored that treaty ever since. A student with tentacles instead of legs spoke up. Professor, what happened to the human leaders after the surrender? Most returned to Earth in shame, Veltash replied. Some were tried for war crimes. A few disappeared entirely. The important thing is that the galaxy learned an important lesson about the dangers of allowing primitive species to expand too quickly. The lecture continued for another hour, covering the political aftermath and the establishment of new boundaries. Lisa took careful notes, but her mind was spinning. Nothing the professor said matched what she had learned on Earth. When class ended, Lisa packed her things slowly, watching the other students file out. Her study partner, a Catherian named HFY, waited for her by the door. HFY had compound eyes like an insect and spoke in a buzzing voice, but he was one of the few aliens who treated Lisa as an equal rather than a curiosity. That must be difficult for you to hear, HFY said as they walked toward the cafeteria. Learning about your species' great defeat. It's just history, Lisa replied carefully. We learn from our mistakes. Your people showed courage, at least, HFY continued, fighting against such impossible odds. Even in defeat, there was honor in trying. Lisa nodded politely, but inside she was troubled. The battle descriptions didn't match Earth's records at all. The casualty numbers were wrong. The timeline was compressed. Most importantly, she had never heard of any Treaty of Terran submission. During lunch, Lisa sat with a group of alien students who peppered her with questions about Earth and human culture. Most of their questions came from a place of sympathy. They seemed to view humanity as a defeated species that had learned its place in the galaxy. Lisa played along, acting humble and grateful for the Coalition's mercy. But one question stuck with her. A reptilian student asked, "Who signed the surrender treaty for your people? Was it one of your military leaders?" Lisa paused with her food halfway to her mouth. "I'm not sure," she said honestly. "I'd have to look that up." That evening, Lisa returned to her small dormitory room and accessed her personal communication array. She sent an encrypted message to her mentor back on Earth, Admiral Jake Sullivan. The message was simple. "Need information about Treaty of Terran Submission 2387, urgent." While waiting for a reply, Lisa used her student access to search the Academy's databases. The treaty was there, all right. She could see the official seals of 7 coalition species and formal language about human territorial restrictions and military limitations. But something was odd about the document. The human signatory was listed simply as Earth representative. No name, no rank, no indication of what government authority this person represented. Every other signature included full titles and credentials, but the human side was blank except for those 2 words. Lisa stared at the document for a long time. If Earth had really been defeated so completely, if their government had been forced to surrender, wouldn't they have sent their highest-ranking official to sign? Wouldn't there be records of who this Earth representative was? She thought back to Professor Veltash's lecture. The professor had mentioned that some human leaders disappeared after the war. But which ones? And why would a defeated government's representatives disappear instead of facing justice or returning home in shame? The more Lisa thought about it, the more questions arose. If humans had lost so badly, why did they still control the same 17 systems they had before the war? Why was Earth's military still active and expanding? Why were humans like her being accepted into elite alien military academies? Lisa's communication array chimed softly. Admiral Sullivan's reply was brief but troubling. "No such treaty exists in Earth records. Recommend extreme caution. We'll investigate." Lisa sat back in her chair, her mind racing. If Earth had no record of surrendering, if they had no record of signing any treaty, then what had really happened in 2387? And why was the entire galaxy convinced that humanity had lost a war they apparently never surrendered? She thought about tomorrow's class, where Professor Veltash would continue the lecture series on human military failures. Lisa would sit quietly and take notes like a good student. But now she had a mission that was far more important than any assignment. She needed to find out what really happened in humanity's last war, and she had a growing suspicion that the truth would be very different from what the galaxy believed. Lisa spent the next 3 days being the perfect student. She attended every class, took detailed notes, and asked thoughtful questions about military strategy and galactic politics. But in her spare time, she was conducting a very different kind of research. The Xanthera Academy had one of the most complete military databases in the galaxy. As a student, Lisa had access to thousands of historical documents, battle reports, and diplomatic records. She used this access carefully, searching for information about the human war while making sure her queries looked like routine academic research. What she found made her more confused than ever. The official records all told the same story. Professor Veltash had outlined. Humanity had overreached, challenged the coalition, and been soundly defeated. The Treaty of Terran Submission had ended the conflict and established new boundaries that humans had respected ever since. But the more Lisa dug into the details, the more problems she found. The casualty reports didn't add up. According to coalition records, they had destroyed over 600 human ships while losing only 43 of their own vessels. But the detailed battle reports listed specific ship names and commanders, and Lisa could see gaps in the sequences. Ships that should have been destroyed in early battles were mentioned in reports from later engagements. The timeline was wrong too. The coalition claimed the war lasted 3 months, but the dated documents Lisa found spanned nearly 8 months of fighting. Some battles that were supposed to have happened after the final defeat were dated weeks before the treaty signing. Most troubling of all were the territorial maps. Before the war, humans controlled 17 star systems. After their supposed defeat and surrender, they controlled 17 star systems, the same ones. If the coalition had won such a decisive victory, why hadn't they taken any human territory? Lisa was studying these discrepancies when HFY found her in the library. Her Catharian friend buzzed quietly as he approached her study station. "You have been researching human military history," he observed, his compound eyes scanning her screen. "This is painful for you?" "Not painful," Lisa said, quickly closing the files. "Just trying to understand what happened." HFY settled into a chair beside her, his forearms folding in what Lisa had learned was his thinking posture. "I have been wondering about some things too," he said quietly. Lisa looked at him with surprise. "What kind of things?"
"My species fought in that war," HFY explained.
"My grandfather commanded a battle cruiser in the Coalition fleet. He told me stories when I was young before he died." "What kind of stories?" HFY's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "He said the humans fought like demons, that they used tactics no one had ever seen before. He said his ship was part of a formation that had the humans completely surrounded, and somehow the humans still escaped. He never understood how." Lisa felt her pulse quicken. "What else did he say?" "That human ships were faster than they should have been, tougher than they looked. And their commanders," HFY paused. "He said human commanders thought differently than anyone else. They would do things that made no sense until suddenly they did." They sat in silence for a moment. Then HFY asked the question that had been bothering Lisa for days. "If humans lost so completely, why do they still have the same territory? Why do they still have fleets? Why are you here learning coalition military secrets?" Lisa looked around the library. They were alone except for a few students at distant tables. She made a decision. "I don't think we lost," she said quietly. HFY's compound eyes focused on her intently. "What do you mean?" "The records don't match. The numbers are wrong. The timeline is wrong. And there's no record on Earth of any surrender treaty." "You contacted Earth?" HFY sounded alarmed. "My mentor, Admiral Sullivan. He says Earth has no record of signing any treaty. No record of surrendering at all." HFY was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, he spoke again. "If humans did not lose, then what happened?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Over the next week, Lisa expanded her research. She used her security clearance to access classified battle reports that regular students couldn't see. What she found there made her question everything she thought she knew about the war. The classified reports were very different from the public versions. They contained details that had been scrubbed from the official histories. References to unprecedented human tactics and unexplained losses appeared throughout the documents. In one report from a coalition admiral, Lisa found a passage that made her hands shake. "Recommend immediate withdrawal from Proxima Sector. Human fleet commanded by Phillips has destroyed 3 of our battle groups using unknown weapons and tactics. Morale among remaining ships is breaking down. Request reinforcements and new strategic assessment." But according to public records, Admiral Phillips had been defeated at Proxima. Her fleet had been destroyed. How could she have been requesting reinforcements if she had won? Lisa found more reports like this. Coalition commanders describing human victories as defeats, successful human operations being rewritten as failed attempts. Most disturbing of all, she found communications between coalition leaders discussing narrative management and historical revision. The truth began to take shape in Lisa's mind, but it was so impossible that she could hardly believe it. That night, Lisa received another message from Admiral Sullivan. This one was longer and encrypted with military-grade security. "Lisa," the message began, "your questions have stirred up some interest back home. I've been authorized to share some classified information with you. What I'm about to tell you must not leave secure channels." Lisa's heart pounded as she read the rest of the message. "There was no Treaty of Terran submission because we never submitted. The war ended when coalition forces withdrew after suffering catastrophic losses. The treaty was created by coalition leadership to save face with their own populations. Admiral Phillips didn't lose at Proxima. She won decisively, destroying 3 enemy battle fleets with a force 1/10 their size. Captain Ben Torres didn't disappear. He spent 6 weeks behind enemy lines destroying supply depots and communication relays. Captain Amy Chen didn't die in a suicide attack. She infiltrated the coalition capital system and held their homeworld hostage until they agreed to negotiate. The coalition was facing complete military collapse when they requested a ceasefire, but instead of demanding surrender, our leadership agreed to let them save face. The official story became that we had lost while the reality was kept classified. Why would we do this? Because we realized something important. It's better to be underestimated than feared. Let them think they defeated us. Let them think we're weak and peaceful. Meanwhile, we've spent 40 years building the most advanced military in the galaxy. Lisa stared at the message for a long time. Everything suddenly made sense. The wrong casualty numbers, the impossible timeline, the unchanged territories. Humanity hadn't lost the war. They had won it so completely that their enemies needed to pretend otherwise just to function. But if this was true, then what was Lisa doing here at the Academy? Why would Earth send students to learn alien military tactics if they had already proven superior? The answer came in Admiral Sullivan's final paragraph. Your mission is more important than you know. Learn everything you can about coalition doctrine and strategy. Understand how they think, how they fight, how they plan, because someday the truth about our last war might come out. And when it does, we need to be ready for their next move. Lisa deleted the message and sat back in her chair. She was no longer just a student trying to earn her commission. She was a spy, gathering intelligence on behalf of a species that had been playing a much deeper game than anyone realized. The next morning in Professor Veltash's class, Lisa listened to another lecture about human military failures. But now she understood what she was really hearing, the carefully constructed mythology of a species too proud to admit they had been outfought by primitives from a backwater world. As the professor described the cowardly human retreat from the Battle of Kepler Station, Lisa made careful notes. But she wasn't writing down the official version of events. She was documenting the lies, preparing for the day when the galaxy would learn what really happened when humanity fought its last war, and won. Lisa had been planning her move for 2 weeks. Professor Veltash would be off-world for 3 days, attending a military conference on Zentros Prime. The professor's office would be empty, and the Academy's maintenance cycle would shut down most security systems for routine updates. It was the perfect opportunity to find the truth. Lisa waited until the third shift began, when most students were asleep and the corridors were nearly empty. She made her way through the Academy's crystalline halls, staying in the shadows and avoiding the patrol routes she had memorized over the past month. Professor Veltash's office was on the 15th level of the academic tower. The door was secured with both physical locks and quantum encryption, but Lisa had prepared for this. Admiral Sullivan had included some interesting files with his last message, including detailed schematics of Xanthera security systems and the access codes used by maintenance crews. The door opened silently, and Lisa slipped inside. The professor's office was vast, filled with crystalline formations that served as both decoration and data storage. Books and artifacts from dozens of worlds lined the walls, and holographic displays showed star maps and battle formations. Lisa activated a small device Admiral Sullivan had smuggled to her through diplomatic channels. It looked like a standard Academy tablet, but it was actually a military-grade hacking tool designed to crack alien computer systems. She approached the professor's main terminal, a towering crystal formation that pulsed with internal light. The hacking device went to work, running thousands of access attempts per second while masking its activity as routine system maintenance. After 20 minutes, the device chirped softly. Lisa was in. The professor's personal files were enormous. Decades of research, teaching materials, and academic papers filled directory after directory. But Lisa wasn't interested in the public materials. She was looking for the classified archives. The files marked with coalition military codes that even Academy students weren't supposed to see. She found them buried deep in the system, protected by layers of encryption and security protocols. But Admiral Sullivan's device was designed for exactly this kind of work. One by one, the barriers fell away. What Lisa found in those files changed everything she thought she knew about the war. The first document was a battle report from Coalition Admiral Thexmar, commanding the 3rd Battle Fleet at the engagement near Proxima. The report was marked Eyes Only Coalition Command and dated 3 days. After the battle, Professor Veltash claimed, had been a decisive coalition victory, catastrophic, losses sustained in encounter with human fleet, the report began. Admiral Phillips' force of 47 vessels engaged our formation of 230 ships at 0847 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Initial engagement proceeded as expected, with our forces maintaining superior position and firepower advantage. Lisa read on, her eyes widening with each paragraph. At 0921 hours, human vessels began employing unknown tactical doctrine. Ships that appeared to be retreating suddenly reversed course and attacked our rear formations. Vessels we had marked as destroyed continued to function and fight. By 1200 hours, we had lost 86 ships, including the battlecruiser Eternal Sword and the dreadnought Spear of Justice. The report continued with increasingly desperate language. Human Commander Phillips appears to understand our battle doctrine better than our own officers. Every tactical move we make is anticipated and countered. Recommend immediate withdrawal and strategic reassessment. But this wasn't the most shocking part. At the bottom of the report, Lisa found a handwritten note. For official records, this engagement will be reported as a coalition victory with minimal losses. Actual casualty reports to be classified at highest level. Lisa opened file after file, finding the same pattern repeated across the entire war. Coalition forces suffering devastating defeats that were immediately rewritten as victories. Human tactics that were so effective they seemed impossible. Battles where small human forces destroyed coalition fleets 10 times their size. The Battle of Kepler Station, which Professor Veltash described as a cowardly human retreat, was actually a brilliant tactical withdrawal where Captain Ben Torres lured 3 coalition battle groups into a carefully prepared trap. When the coalition forces thought they had the humans cornered, Torres activated hidden weapon platforms and minefields that destroyed nearly 200 enemy ships. The final defeat at Earth's outer system was the most incredible of all. Captain Amy Chen, commanding a single human dreadnought called Liberty's Edge, had somehow penetrated the coalition's most heavily defended space and reached their capital world of Hegemonia. For 72 hours, she held the planet hostage while broadcasting demands for a complete coalition, withdrawal from human space. The classified files contained the actual communications between coalition leadership during those 3 days. Lisa read them with amazement and growing understanding. Chen's vessel is somehow immune to our weapons, wrote General Velthak, the coalition's supreme military commander. We have fired everything in our arsenal at her ship, and it continues to function normally. Our scientists cannot explain the technology she is using. The human commander has demonstrated that she can destroy our capital world at will, added Admiral Kurthos of the Second Fleet. She has already eliminated our orbital defense platforms and disabled our primary military installations. If she chooses to fire on the planet itself, billions will die. We must negotiate, concluded High Counselor Zarthen. But we cannot let our populations know that we have been defeated by a single primitive human vessel. The shock would destroy our governments and our species' confidence. We must find another way. That other way, Lisa realized, was the lie that had shaped galactic politics for 40 years. The final files contained the real truth about the war's end. The coalition hadn't forced humanity to surrender. They had begged for a ceasefire. Captain Chen had withdrawn only after the coalition agreed to respect all human territorial claims and end their expansion into human space. But publicly, the story became very different. Coalition leaders agreed to portray the war as their own victory, while secretly honoring the terms they had agreed to under duress. The Treaty of Terran Submission was created as a face-saving device, with the coalition's own diplomats forging the signature of the mysterious Earth representative. Lisa found the real treaty, signed by Captain Chen on behalf of Earth's government and by all 7 coalition leaders. Its terms were exactly the opposite of what the galaxy believed. The coalition agreed to withdraw from disputed territories, respect human expansion rights, and pay substantial reparations disguised as humanitarian aid. But the most important clause was hidden in an appendix that wouldn't be declassified for 50 years. The coalition acknowledges human military superiority and agrees to provide access to advanced technologies, strategic intelligence, and military training to human personnel as requested. Suddenly, Lisa understood why she was really at the academy. She wasn't there as a defeated enemy learning the victor's ways. She was there as part of the winning side, collecting intelligence and technology as agreed in the secret treaty. Lisa copied everything to her device and carefully covered her tracks. As she prepared to leave the professor's office, she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. She froze, listening carefully. The footsteps stopped outside the office door. Lisa quickly shut down the terminal and hid behind one of the crystalline formations, her heart pounding. The door opened with a soft chime and she heard the distinctive ringing voice of Professor Veltash. "I know you are there, Captain Morgan," the professor said calmly. "Please come out. We need to talk." Lisa considered running, but there was nowhere to go. She stepped out from behind the crystal, expecting to be arrested or expelled. Instead, she found Professor Veltash looking at her with what might have been relief. "You found the classified files," Veltash said. It wasn't a question. Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice. "Then you know the truth about your species' great victory," the professor continued. "The victory that my people have been too proud to acknowledge for 40 years. You knew?" Lisa managed to ask. "I have known from the beginning," Veltash replied. "I was there. I served as a junior intelligence officer during the war. I saw the real battle reports. I watched my superior officers rewrite history to protect their reputations and their governments." Professor Veltash moved to her desk and activated a privacy shield that would block any electronic surveillance. "For 37 years, I have taught the lies that my leaders created. Every day I have watched human students sit quietly while I describe their species' greatest victory as their most shameful defeat." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because the truth would have restarted the war," Veltash said simply. "My people, all the coalition species, could not accept that they had been defeated so completely by a species they considered primitive. If they had known that humanity won, they would have demanded revenge." Lisa stared at the professor. "But now things are different," Veltash replied. "The secret cannot be kept much longer. Too many people are asking questions. Too many inconsistencies are becoming visible. The truth will come out soon, whether we want it to or not." The professor moved to the window, looking out at the Academy's grounds where alien cadets from across the galaxy toured. Professor Veltash's revelation changed everything for Lisa. Over the next few days, she found herself looking at the Academy, her fellow students, and even her classes with completely different eyes. She was no longer a student from a defeated species learning the ways of her betters. She was a spy from the victorious side, gathering intelligence while surrounded by representatives of the powers her people had already beaten. But she wasn't alone. Professor Veltash began sharing information with her, carefully and quietly. The crystalline instructor revealed that she wasn't the only faculty member who knew the truth. Several other professors, all veterans of the war, had been living with the same burden of teaching lies for decades. "There is a group of us," Veltash explained during one of their secret meetings. "We call ourselves the Truth Keepers. We have been documenting the real history, gathering evidence, preparing for the day when the lies would finally collapse." Lisa learned that the Truth Keepers included instructors from multiple coalition species. Professor Gakthan from the Reptilian Studies Department had been a battle fleet commander who witnessed human ships doing impossible things. Commander Yixpol from Strategic Planning had personally negotiated the secret clauses of the real treaty. Even Dean Markoth, the Academy's highest administrator, knew the truth about humanity's victory. "Why haven't you spoken out?" Lisa asked during one of their clandestine conversations. "Because we understood the consequences," Veltash replied. "The coalition species were not ready to accept the truth. Their pride, their sense of superiority, their entire view of the galaxy was built on the belief that primitive species could be controlled and defeated. Learning that humans had outfought them so completely would have shattered their confidence and probably led to desperate attempts at revenge. But now, Veltash explained, the situation was changing. Too many people were asking questions. The inconsistencies in the official history were becoming harder to explain. Most importantly, humanity's rapid advancement in technology and military capability was making the old lie unsustainable. "Your people have not been idle during these 40 years, Veltash noted. "Coalition intelligence estimates suggest that human military capability has grown by more than 300% since the war. Your fleets are larger, your weapons more advanced, your tactical doctrine more sophisticated. If the truth comes out now and leads to another war, the result would be even more decisive than before." Lisa began reaching out to other human personnel throughout the galaxy. Using encrypted communications and carefully coded messages, she made contact with a network that she discovered had been operating for years. Human officers, diplomats, and intelligence agents had been quietly gathering information, building relationships, and preparing for exactly this moment. The network was larger than she had imagined. Colonel Steve Baker commanded a human outpost on the Galactic Rim, where he had been collecting intelligence on coalition military movements. Captain Rachel Stone served aboard a mixed-species exploration vessel and had been mapping coalition defensive positions. Dr. Alan Pierce worked in a coalition research facility, learning about alien technology and scientific advances. All of them had been operating under the same basic understanding. Humanity had won its last war, but had allowed the galaxy to believe otherwise. All of them had been preparing for the day when the truth would emerge. That day came, sooner than anyone expected. Lisa was in advanced tactical studies class when her personal communicator buzzed with an emergency priority message. She glanced at it discreetly and felt her blood turn to ice. The message was from Colonel Baker. Truth is coming out. Coalition intercepts suggest multiple governments now questioning official history. Prepare for possible exposure within days. Lisa looked around the classroom where alien cadets from across the galaxy sat listening to Professor Corveth explain human military weaknesses. Most of these students would become military officers, fleet commanders, and government leaders. What would they do when they learned that everything they had been taught about humanity was wrong? After class, Lisa found HFY waiting for her in their usual meeting spot. Her Catherian friend looked agitated, his compound eyes darting nervously as he spoke. Something is happening. HFY buzzed quietly. I have been hearing whispers among the faculty. Questions about the human war. Requests for classified documents. Some of the senior instructors have been called away for emergency consultations with their home governments. Lisa felt a chill. If coalition governments were starting to investigate the war independently, the carefully maintained fiction could collapse at any moment. There is more, HFY continued. My cousin works in coalition intelligence. She sent me a message yesterday asking strange questions about human military capabilities. She wanted to know why human fleets are so much larger now than they were during the war, if humans were supposed to be restricted by the surrender treaty. That evening, Lisa received another message from Admiral Sullivan. This one was marked with the highest level of military encryption, indicating extreme urgency. Lisa, the situation is developing rapidly. Coalition intelligence services have begun investigating discrepancies in the official history. At least 3 member governments have discovered evidence of the real battle outcomes. We estimate that full disclosure is now inevitable within 72 hours. Your mission parameters are changing. You are no longer gathering intelligence. You are now preparing for crisis management. We need to know how coalition forces will react when the truth comes out. Will they accept it? Will they demand revenge? Will they try to attack before humanity can prepare? Be ready for anything. If the situation deteriorates, you may need to evacuate immediately, but if possible, stay and observe. Your reports from inside the academy could be crucial for understanding how the coalition will respond. Lisa didn't sleep that night. She spent the hours reviewing everything she had learned about coalition military doctrine, political structures, and cultural attitudes. If the truth about the war was about to emerge, humanity needed to understand how their former enemies would react. The next morning brought chaos. Lisa arrived at Professor Veltash's class to find the lecture hall buzzing with excitement. Students were clustered in small groups, speaking in hushed tones and sharing information on their personal communicators. When Professor Veltash entered, the room fell silent, but Lisa could feel the tension in the air. I am aware of the rumors circulating throughout the academy, Professor Veltash announced. Yes. Certain classified documents regarding the human war have been requested by coalition intelligence. Yes, there are questions being asked about the official historical record. No, I will not speculate about what this might mean. A reptilian student near the front raised his hand. Professor, is it true that some battle reports from the war have been reclassified at higher security levels? That is correct, Veltash replied carefully. Why would historical documents need higher security classification after 40 years? Professor Veltash was quiet for a long moment. Lisa could see the internal struggle playing out on the crystalline instructor's face. Finally, she made her decision. Because, the professor said slowly, history is not always what it appears to be. Sometimes the victors allow others to write the official story. Sometimes the defeated are permitted to save face by claiming victory. And sometimes the truth is more complex than anyone wants to admit. The lecture hall erupted. Students began shouting questions, demanding explanations, sharing theories and speculation. Some alien cadets looked confused, others angry, and a few appeared frightened. Lisa sat quietly in the back of the room, watching the Coalition's carefully constructed mythology begin to crumble. She thought about Admiral Sullivan's message and wondered if humanity was ready for what was about to happen. In the midst of the chaos, her communicator buzzed again. This message was from Colonel Baker. It's happening. Coalition governments are declassifying war documents. The truth will be public within hours. All human personnel should prepare for emergency protocols. Lisa looked around the room at her alien classmates, many of whom were beginning to realize that their entire understanding of the galaxy was about to change. She thought about Professor Veltash's question from days earlier. What happens when they learn that the defeated humans have spent 40 years growing stronger while they grew complacent? Very soon, Lisa realized they were all going to find out. The next message that appeared on her communicator made her heart stop. It was a general broadcast from Coalition Command, transmitted to all military installations across the galaxy. All personnel are advised that historical records regarding the Terran conflict of 2387 are under review. Preliminary findings suggest significant discrepancies in official accounts. Full investigation results will be released shortly. All units should maintain normal operational status pending further orders. Lisa closed her communicator and looked up at the chaos surrounding her. The lie that had shaped galactic politics for 40 years was finally coming apart, and nobody knew what would happen next.